Good afternoon. I would like to begin by acknowledging we are on the unceded ancestral territories of the Sechelt Nation. It is Wednesday, July 24th, and I'd like to call to order Committee of the Whole. It's 3 o'clock. And can we call to order the meeting? Can I have an adoption of the agenda? Second, all in favor? Okay, moving on. Number 3, appointments and delegations. We have Dave Chisholm and Chris Hergesheimer from the Sunshine Coast Regional Economic Development Organization going to give us an update on activities. Thank you.
We're good there? Better, yeah. So good afternoon, Mayor, Council, staff. Appreciate the opportunity for letting us present and provide you with some context about Scredo and some brief updates of our activities. We are aware that due to the change on council, some of you may not have had any exposure to Scredo, and so this is a good chance for us to help provide some context and some activities there. We trust that the information you received in the agenda package, the charter, the service agreement, the constitution and bylaws, as well as our progress report from January, will provide you with enough context to understand both our historical formation as well as our mission and mandate moving forward. So with the exception of a few minor updates about our particular projects, we aren't going to provide a project update at this point in time. Your staff now has a copy of our most recent progress report and our annual plan for the year ahead. They received that on Friday, so it's an advanced confidential draft that you should be receiving shortly, and that should provide all the information you need about the advancement of projects since January. It should also provide a briefing on the status of our larger strategic direction for the year ahead as well. It's really important for us to note at the outset, for those of you who are new and becoming aware and with Scredo, that we began operating and continue to operate in the spirit of collaboration. Most of our projects are grounded with one, if not more, community partners. In many cases, we've gone beyond partnerships and actually hired other local organizations who are already engaged in similar work to continue doing that work through service contracts to help us meet our shared goals. And we believe that for the right now, we have a whole Team Sunshine Coast with a number of community organizations all facing the same direction with some shared goals, and we continue to operate. That being said, there are highlights that we would like to bring your is our Fuse Community Work. I think we're back on. Excellent. And the third project of importance for us to note is that we co-wrote a grant with a number of other community organizations to the Rural Dividend Fund for the development of a community resource lab. We're still working on the core vision and mission of that, but it's sort of a community center for not-for-profits and social enterprise and government to provide a place to develop ideas and link and see those networks between different organizations on the coast, as well as a co-location space for some community organizations to share resources and build capacity. And we're happy to announce that our grant was successful for nearly $100,000, $84,000 to be exact, and Scredo and Community Futures put in the other matching funds. So we're involved in discussions around revising the project manager position for that, which will be advertised in September and expected to start in October of this year with an 18-month long contract to sort of build out the business model and really explore the feasibility of that project. So those three projects represent big changes from the January progress report, and they all will be in the most update report that your staff now has. The next piece of issue is on the table is that there's been there's some changes to staff and governance, as some of you may or may not be aware. Chair David Chisholm is vacating.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
So, right? Yeah, it might work. Are you advertising already for the next position for somebody?
Next position, there is an executive search underway. Interviews are scheduled for the middle of August and expected that this person will start at the latest by October 1st.
Okay, and when are you done?
I have a flexible end date, officially September 15th, but up until November 1st as needed.
Okay, so you're looking for some overlap or?
I think that overlap would be extremely beneficial. The organization will probably, as much as possible, engage both Dave and I in that passing of the institutional knowledge down from that overlap. We fully expect that to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Last year, one of the bigger topics of discussion with the previous Sechelt Council was the public image of Scredo. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to what you've done to address that concern that the public sees very little of Scredo.
Still flashing. Oh, now we're back. Since that concern was raised, we did do
Any other questions? Matt?
So as a follow-up to that, what is Scredo doing to communicate off-coast? So actively reaching out to potential investors into our community.
See if it stays on. Yeah. It's a good question. Off-coast advertising and the attraction of businesses has not been a priority in our first 2 years of operation. Given the PNP project, we've been receiving a number of inquiries with people already interested in the region, and that's taken up a significant amount of time and certainly help us meeting our business attraction component of the BREA program. There is some talk about how we do that over the years ahead in terms of reaching out and attracting other provincial businesses or regional businesses that may wish to relocate here. We've been faced by a number of challenges, admittedly, around labor force shortages, housing, some ferry challenges and things like that. So our efforts have primarily been to draw on the existing resources that we have here, strengthen our workforce, support our local businesses to grow and thrive as much as possible. And our efforts in the years ahead will have a little bit more focus on some off-coast communication and promotions of how we can work together with existing organizations to attract new businesses here.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item 3.2. We have Annie Wise from Sunshine Coast Tourism giving us an update on activities.
Hi, just give me 1 second here to get set up. Oh, perfect. Right. Yay, it works. Just pull up so I have my notes. I also brought, I know sometimes it's hard to picture marketing when it's always on a screen. So I brought just a few of our pieces of print collateral just to share, if that's, is that okay? No. Hold on one sec. Let's try that again, and I'll just sync it, and you can get the sound off my computer. So yeah, the video is a little choppy playing through the system, but I think you get the idea. So along with that video, we also did a few different versions of it in vertical formats for different platforms like Instagram, as well as specific videos to promote the Sechelt Arts Festival, the Sunshine Coast Art Crawl, and the Sunshine Coast Mushroom Festival. And all of those are staggered throughout the fall to help promote those events and make sure that we're sending referrals to businesses, especially the ones that have, a healthy fall offering and are open, as well as making sure that for events and ticket sales that we're helping move those things forward. And to further complement that, we're also sending out email newsletters. We have other print ads, and we have digital banners across key partner websites. So how did it go? We did this fall campaign. Did it work? Did it bring more tourists here? We saw during that time an 8% increase in room revenues versus the previous fall. We saw a 50% increase in our website traffic, and we were able to secure 20,000 referrals to local businesses via our website just in those 3 months. Again, I could elaborate and tell you about the whole year, but I just really wanted to give you an example of one of our campaigns and the success that we're having with it. I'm going to skip forward a little. We also host media regularly, so travel journalists. In 2018, we hosted more than 40 media, which resulted in over 326 online articles about traveling to the Sunshine Coast. Some of the highlights from that was being in publications like the National Post, the Globe and Mail, Fox Sports, WestJet Magazine, some pretty big time publications for our little Sunshine Coast. And to give you an idea about our website, we are now seeing over 1 million page views per year. And that's coming from about 350,000 unique individuals. And we've just seen an incredible growth year over year. When we started receiving MRDT in 2016, one of the first priorities was to launch a brand new website because the old one was, for lack of a better word, terrible. So not because people weren't trying, we just didn't really have the budget to build such a robust website and to really give it the love and attention it needed. So and we've seen incredible results, and we're really proud of that site, and we think that it does an incredible service to visitors, and we keep seeing substantial increases in traffic. As you can see, 64% growth year over year is not common. As well as our social media. We now have over 34,000 followers. We're seeing about a 30% year over year growth. And when I started with Sunshine Coast Tourism in 2013, there were, Instagram had just started, and there were about 2,000 uses of hashtag Sunshine Coast BC. Now there's over 150,000. And I like to think that we played a pretty big part in pushing that out. And lastly, just to give you a quick update on the Sechelt Visitor Center, I thank you so much for the opportunity to take over that contract. And we've seen some pretty great results just even in the first couple of months of us being at the helm. For the first 2 full months that they've been in operation under our umbrella, we're seeing about a 4% increase in total visitors. We also were able to successfully receive funding for 3 summer students, which of course greatly helps us not only make sure that we have expanded summer hours, but that there's not just one person with a line of people waiting to talk to them, that we can have multiple people at the desk at a time. And then also, because we're now managing both the Gibsons and the Sechelt Visitor Centers, we're seeing a lot of enhanced collaboration and communication that the staff there, the staff that were there under previous management just never had before. That's allowing us to, decrease duplication, to better share resources, materials, timing. I think they have some volunteers that are now going back and forth between the 2 facilities. And it's just really been great to have them both under our umbrella. We also, as part of that bit of funding that was set aside to, I think it was $10,000 to expand and look at other ways that we could possibly offer visitor services, I worked with Julie to procure 3 new visitor kiosks, digital touchscreen kiosks that we're just in the final stage of development on, and making sure that the software is ready to go before they're actually out in the public. But that's really exciting, and I really would congratulate council on seeing other opportunities for visitor services. We think that what Sechelt has done can really be an example to the other communities on the Sunshine Coast, in that we have to be forward thinking around visitor services, that it is fantastic to have that face-to-face, but recognizing that that doesn't work for all of our visitors, and to be able to reach them in other places and help enhance their experience is really vital. So thanks for having that vision and going there with us. And if you want to see one of the kiosks now, we have one set up in the visitor center while we're just testing it out, but the other ones will be on board soon at Trailbay Mall, the Sechelt Tim Hortons, and the Wilson Creek IGA. We also are doing a new Sechelt map in collaboration with the district and the Downtown Business Association. This is just a draft, so we're still working on it, but essentially it would be a tearaway map that we would also have the ability to fold and rack at some point in the future. And so, one side is an overview and highlights the various neighborhoods around Sechelt, and then more of a downtown walking map version. I don't know if you've seen the current version of the downtown walking map that's in the visitor center, but it is a screen grab from Google Maps. So this is a really exciting upgrade, and we're excited to be working on this project. And the last bit I have is that, we have a 10-year destination development strategy that hopefully at some point you've all been able to read. I believe the link for it was included with the agenda items, but it's also available on our website. It's an incredible document, and it's also an incredibly huge document. So one of the first priorities within that was to create a 3-year action plan, which we now have. And that's helping look at what are some of the most important things along that strategy, and also what are the things that we can reasonably accomplish within the first couple of years. And some of the really pressing themes are, of course, around transportation, labor challenges, and tourism product development. So Julie and I have been meeting on the subject, along with a variety of interested partners around Sechelt, to look at ways at implementing some of those actions specifically in Sechelt. And so that's the main gist of what I have for you today. I'd be happy to answer some questions, but I really just wanted to say that going forward, I would love to see Sunshine Coast Tourism and our local governments have a greater partnership. And I've been able to work more closely with Julie, especially since taking over the visitor center contract. But we have a lot of work to do. And while I feel like we have done an amazing job on the marketing front with very limited staff, I think that that there's a lot of key messaging that we share with the District of Sechelt around priorities, and I mean, it says right in your strategic plan that tourism is your number one industry, and so I feel like we can work closer together going forward in helping share those messages, educate locals and business owners to the value, because as we all know, there are specific challenges around tourism as well, and we hear the gripes and complaints. And I live here too, and and we understand that. And it's really, really important for Sunshine Coast Tourism that we are promoting the region in a sustainable way. That is directly in our mandate. That we we don't need to be Disneyland. That's not what the Sunshine Coast is. That's not what it needs to be, and that's not what Sunshine Coast Tourism wants. So we really are working hard to get that messaging out there. Come and enjoy nature, but don't start a wildfire. Come and enjoy nature, but don't feed the bears. That type of messaging and helping people understand what respectful tourism to our region looks like, so that we are sustainable 5 years, 10 years, 50 years down the road. And so I look forward to, just our continued development of our working relationship and finding ways that we can better support one another with some of those messages. And then the final piece of that is our MRDT, as we talked about, that one of those main pillars of funding. That's a 5-year program, and we have to renew it. The end of that program is in August of 2021, which seems like a really long time away, but in 2 years. In the meantime, we have to submit our renewal application not quite a year ahead of that, but pretty close. And so really, we only have 1 year to put our renewal application together. And part of that application means getting 51% of our hoteliers across the Sunshine Coast to sign on with a letter of support. The first time around, that took us a number of years, and it was quite challenging. We feel super confident because we've done an amazing job with those funds in the years that we've had it, that we can we can successfully get those signatures again. But, we'll be looking to council to help support us and be a partner in that. And if there are particular relationships with, with hotel owners, or that we can work together to make sure they understand the value of the work that we're doing and how we can, and why we need to renew that program, that would be very much appreciated. So that's all. Thank you so much. I know that was a lot of information. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions? Eric?
You said it took a couple of years for the hotels to sign on. Was it specific areas of pinch points that you just couldn't connect with? Or?
I think there was just a lot of uncertainty. Anytime people hear the word tax, they just assume that it's more money out of their pocket, and they would just say no. There was a lot of loud voices that weren't even collecting or wouldn't have been collecting the tax, that were spreading misinformation, saying that the hotels themselves would be paying it when really they're just collecting it from their guests, that might affect their bottom line, that people wouldn't book if they had to pay an extra 2%. Or that Sunshine Coast Tourism wouldn't be good stewards of that funding. And so those are some of the challenges that we had to make sure and work through. Another big part of it was because it's the hotel owners primarily, and at that time, the small accommodations, our short-term rentals, weren't required by legislation to have to collect it. So there was a voice in there that was saying, hey, if, we have to collect this tax from our consumers, so should these guys. They're running hotels too. They're just smaller ones. And so that was a point of contention to make sure that we had to find ways within our governance and our structure to make sure that we're addressing those concerns. And I feel like we've done a great job. And now the provincial government has changed that particular piece of legislation so that it's a more even playing field in terms of tax collection. And I think that'll really help our case.
So have you reached out to the hotels recently to say, how's it going? A couple more years, we're going to be looking to do this again. how do you feel it's going?
Yeah, we actually internally as staff just had a big strategy meeting this last month, and we'll be more publicly embarking on that renewal strategy in September. That's kind of our timeline for really starting. But we have ongoing conversations with our members and hotel owners pretty regularly, and a lot of them are really engaged. I mean, we have 4 of them sitting on our board, and so we feel like we have a pretty good pulse of the sentiment, but sometimes it's challenging because there are lots of absentee owners. It's not good enough just to get a manager's signature. You need the owner, and some of those owners are overseas or don't like to be found, and so we sometimes that can be a challenge. But the ones that we're regularly engaged with feel really positively about what we're doing, and are really happy that legislation has changed and have a voice within what we're doing.
So when you ask us, saying that you want our support, what's the risk level, like, to say for what we have control of here? Mm-hmm. What would you say the risk level is in the Sechelt district for people that wouldn't sign on?
I want to be careful not to name any names at this point, but there are a few fairly prominent hotels that in Sechelt that I would say look as though they're not really operating or aren't regularly accepting guests, and we don't know why. And that's not really, we're not there to be judge and jury, but those types of properties are difficult to get to sign on and to have communications with. So definitely, if there's a relationship there that one of you may have, and we can, sit down and have a meeting, with owners and help share with them about what we do and provide some background and information, that would be extremely helpful for us.
Any other questions? Renata?
Thank you. So do you have, you mentioned that Julie and you have regular meetings. Do you also have regular meetings with partners in our area? For example, the Downtown Business Association, maybe the Aboriginal tourism people, Coasters Car Club, all the Writers Festival, etc., so that, ahead of time, there's a strategy. And the reason I'm asking is BC Bike Race came through here recently, and one of their comments was, nobody knows they're coming. We know they're coming, we get invited, but Downtown Business Association doesn't necessarily know, the restaurants don't know. So how is all of that brought together?
Definitely. Part of our strategy internally, and when I say internally, I don't mean just within our organization, but here on the Sunshine Coast with our stakeholders versus our consumer marketing. We send out regularly, monthly, if not more frequently, newsletters in which we're trying to be the industry voice. That newsletter has about 400 subscribers, including, of course, member businesses, local government, community groups such as chambers of commerce, and lots of the events and the Arts Council. They're all subscribed to that newsletter. So that is a source where we try to alert them to tourism news, industry developments, opportunities. It's not perfect, and I'm sure we could always pump up our communication. The BC Bike Race specifically is an area that we've really worked to support. We're very active anytime there's an event, whether it's something like BC Bike Race that is coming through town, or something like the Writers Festival that only takes place here and is year over year. We are very active on social media, and we encourage our local stakeholders to follow us to see, hey, what's coming up in the world of tourism on the Sunshine Coast. So yeah, I feel like we're very active on that front. But it's always interesting seeing the open rates on our newsletters and things, and trying to find ways to creatively entice people to read them. So,
Any other questions? Matt?
So I appreciate that you've been doing marketing in the shoulder season in the fall. Do you, sorry, let's try that again. Do you think that the Sunshine Coast is at or near capacity in terms of tourism during the summer? And if so, what is the limiting factor that may be making some kind of capacity on the Sunshine Coast?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, in terms of capacity, we could look at that in a number of ways. Obviously, the ferries is our biggest bottleneck. And if we're looking at what total ferry capacity is versus how many passengers there are in the summer months, that would be a question we'd have to ask them to see how much room there is to grow. We know it's not a lot, which is one of the reasons why, as part of our destination development, we're sitting on the ferries, the committee. The Ferry Advisory Committee. Paul sits on the committee to help make sure that they're thinking about tourist needs as well as residents when they're making decisions. We could also look at capacity in terms of hotel occupancy, and while it's improving drastically, they're not like what we would consider kind of maximum occupancy is really actually around 80%. Most hotels like to leave a little bit of flexibility within that, and typically that's about the most turnover that they can handle. And while I don't have the exact figures because there hasn't been a study done to that effect, just from anecdotal information that we have from our board members that have shared with us and other hotels, we're estimating that sort of Sunshine Coast globally, so looking at all the different properties, we're probably around an average occupancy in the summer of around 60 to 70%. So I do feel, at least in terms of rooms, there's room to grow. Now, keep in mind, I'm speaking Langdale to Lund, and that's going to vary slightly from community to community. I can definitely say that that percentage is probably a bit higher in the South Coast than it is the North Coast. There's a whole second ferry, whole second set of challenges in promoting tourism. So I do believe there is some room to grow, but it's not a lot, if that helps answer your question.
So your MRDT is coming up in August 2021, and currently you're doing 2%. Are you going to be looking to try to move to the 3% that's allowed?
We are in discussions still within our own board. There's a variety of reasons around the table why we would and wouldn't. Of course, the additional funding, would provide a whole another host of opportunities for us. But there are still some delicate relationships that we feel if we did try to push to the 3%, that we may lose the buy-in from some of our hoteliers. It's the education and understanding of what we do is a huge challenge for us, just because it is such a broad region and we are limited in staff. So there are only so many hours in the day to go speak to 52 different hotel properties, which that's the number that we have to get. We have to get 51% of them to renew. And so, and spread it over a large geographic area. So we haven't made a final decision at the board level yet, or I should say the board has not made a final decision yet, but I think they're leaning towards keeping it at 2%, just based on the feedback from some of our hotel partners.
So we know there's short-term rentals all over the place. Are they part of your organization? Do they pay the MRDT?
So as of October 1st, it has been legislated now that that if you are providing basically room by the night, whether you're a hotel, you're a B&B, a vacation rental, that you have to collect both PST and the MRDT if your area is an MRDT collecting region. The only exemptions to that are if you're making like $2,500 of revenue or less annually. So maybe if you just rented your room out once, you wouldn't count. Or places like campgrounds, RV parks, things like that, they don't collect. But other than that, all of them are now collecting. We're supposed to be collecting.
So are you then provided with a list of who they all are?
No.
No. So how does the companies collect it and send it to you, or
So
does it get to you?
it's just like PST, and so they collect the tax and remit it along with PST, and it goes to the Ministry of Finance, and then the Ministry of Finance disseminates it to the designated recipient, which is us.
Okay, one final question. From your perspective, and you may not be able to answer this now, but you can take the question away. What's missing on the southern Sunshine Coast here? Because that's an opportunity,
Oh, absolutely.
right? So you may have some answers now, but what else? And you can come back to us with that later if you like.
I'll give you an answer now, and then I'm sure I'll think of about 10 more things later. But I think the biggest opportunity, and it goes for Gibsons and Sechelt, but I think Sechelt in particular. And I've lived in Sechelt. I lived right in downtown, and I see it myself. So this might be coming from more of a personal viewpoint, but one of the biggest opportunities for us to grow shoulder season is in meetings and retreats, and there is very limited facilities to not only host a meeting in, but then say you have 50 people at a small conference, and all those 50 people need individual hotel rooms, and you could spread them out, but most meetings of that size, they like to be in one hotel with a conference room within walking distance and a variety of open businesses. And I think that if Sechelt in particular had that, a great example was we actually wanted to bid on the Mountain Bike Tourism Symposium, which has about 300 delegates. We have an incredible mountain bike product, both in the Coast Gravity Park and our local trails. But the needs of that conference, we just didn't have the facilities to match it for the meetings in the hotels. That's that, and so where did they go? They went to Whistler, and I think that and that was in November. So huge opportunity for building up our shoulder season, but we need the facilities. That's the first one that comes to mind, definitely.
Working on it.
Any other questions, Eric?
Comment on a question. Yeah. It's interesting to talk about facilities. Tourism through Vancouver is also down quite a bit this year, and we were talking to the convention center, and they've quit booking conventions because of lack of rooms. All the rooms, they can't book the blocks, so they can't commit to the 200 and 300 and 400 and 500 people conventions. So it's not just us.
Yeah.
On your membership side, in your report, it just talks about an industry membership. Year over year, it seems to be $35,000. How many members do you have?
We have about 250 members, and that $35,000 isn't all directly just membership buy-in. It's also other ways that we have offered for businesses to buy in. So for example, racking your brochures at the visitor center. We offer cooperative ads. So say we'll buy a full page in the Vancouver Sun, and we're gonna brand the top half and have some information, and then we'll sell ads within the bottom half at a subsidized rate. So those types of buy-ins as well, that all contributes to the $35,000. For a typical business, I mean, we have associate and nonprofit rates, but it's $175 annually. It's very reasonable, I think. And we have waived the membership fees for accommodations in lieu of them collecting the MRDT. That was one of the things that, in order to get our hotel partners to sign on back in 2016, that was one thing that they asked for, so we gave it to them. So we did see a bit of a decline in the membership dollars, but by waiving the fee, it made sure that they all were able to participate and have a voice at the table, which is really important for us.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing that we have no new business or business items, can I have a motion to adjourn? Second, all in favor? Any questions from anyone in the audience there? Connie, do you have any questions? Excellent, thank you very much.